Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's version 8.1 Service Pack 1 introduction webinar. My name is Scott Courtier. I'm Senior Technical Sales with InduSoft, and thank you everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. Lots of good attendance this morning, this afternoon. Hopefully we have a good informational webinar for you today. Just some quick logistics. If you haven't attended one of our webinars before on this type of webinar, I can't hear you, so don't bother with the audio portion, at least the microphone portion of it. If you have any questions or comments, put those into the chat panel or the Q&A. I'll try to get to those during the presentation. If not, I'll leave some time at the end for that as well. Let's see. Also, we're going to be recording this webinar, post that up. Usually takes a couple of days. Don't look for it immediately. It takes a couple of days to download it and produce it and put it up there. Also, the slide deck for today will go up there, and I'm going to try to clean up the application that I show you today and maybe put that up there as an example. Some people have already asked for that. So we're also going to be sending out a survey, 3 things. Let us know how we did on that survey. I really appreciate that. Also, let us know if there's any other webinars that you'd like to see. We've got over 160 of those up on our website now. Chances are we already have the topic that you're looking for, but you never know. Let us know what you're looking for. Take a look at those webinars and let us know what you're looking for. Maybe there's more details or something you want. Also, we're going to send you a free T-shirt if you fill out that survey, show your appreciation. And on there, also let us know if you'd like to co-host a webinar with us. I'd love to have you on. Send us an email, let us know, or fill that out in the survey. And we'll get a hold of you and see if other people might be interested in your details and sharing how you've done something with InduSoft to help out a customer. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me move this thing out of the way here. And I'm going to do just about a 5, 6, 7 minute overview. If you've seen the InduSoft presentation before, you've probably seen a few of these slides. There's just a couple things that I want to point out as a lead-in to today's webinar. First of all, if you didn't know this, InduSoft in 2013 was purchased by Invensys, the brand holder of Wonderware. 3 months later, in January 2014, Invensys was purchased by Schneider, so we became part of the Schneider Electric, Wonderware, a few other platforms. And they balled us all together and gave us a company name called Schneider Electric Software, LLC. And then as of March 1st, we have now become part of a company called Aviva based in the UK. It's a software company, and thoughts are that we will be better managed by a software company and have better focus and things of that nature. So what does all that mean for you? We don't see any changes coming. The neat thing is that InduSoft has always had a very customer-focused culture, listening to you guys for features, these types of webinars, the Jumpstart webinar that we do monthly, the training videos on the website, the sample applications, the free phone support, things like that. We always try to be very helpful, make the product so that it's single install and get what you need. So again, we don't anticipate any changes coming there. Actually, I'm kind of looking forward to it, tell you the truth. Next thing is recently we've again won the Control Engineering Engineer's Choice Award this year for 2018. I get to go next week and not next week, week after next, and pick that up in Chicago. So looking forward to that. Thank you, everybody who voted. This is not based on advertising dollars. This is based on readership, based on people like yourselves voting. So really appreciate that. Okay. Skipping ahead to a little bit about the product. Again, if you've seen a recent presentation from us, you'll know that we talk about portability, mobility, interoperability. And what does all of this mean? The portability piece of this means that we can run on any operating system from Windows Desktop to Server, Windows Embedded, Windows CE, including Linux. And the reason I'm showing you these slides is I'm going to talk very heavily today about some features that are built into the Linux version. Mobility, we have 3 different thin clients. I'll talk a bit about those more, but I'm going to talk today about the SMA thin client, the one built on HTML5, and that you can essentially view on any browser. So I'm going to talk about some new features specifically for that. Our interoperability, meaning our communications to not only PLCs, but temperature controllers, drives, robots, and then databases, cloud-based architectures, MQTT, OPC, things of that nature. And so there's quite a few new or enhanced, I should say, drivers in this version. All of this means for you and your customers, again, higher productivity, reliability, and security. Going back to the portability piece of this, the idea, again, is develop once, deploy on any of these platforms. I'm specifically going to be showing some features related to the IoT View product license. For those of you who are not familiar with our naming conventions, if you run InduSoft Web Studio on a desktop or a server operating system, we call that the full runtime. If you run it on Windows Embedded, whether it's Windows Embedded Standard 7, Windows 10, IoT Enterprise, well, we call that license Embedded View. For Windows CE, as you can imagine, we call that CE View. And for Linux and VxWorks, we call that license IoT View. But those are runtime licenses for those different platforms. Again, we have these 3 different thin client licenses. I shouldn't say that because we've simplified our licensing, and now there's one thin client license. Basically, you pick the quantity and you can mix and match for any of these. I'm going to be talking today specific features for the Studio Mobile Access thin clients, or often called Mobile Access. Sometimes we abbreviate that just MA or Mobile Access. And the fact that this is built on HTML5 technology. I want to point out that a lot of emphasis over the last few years has been put on coming out with the feature set that is the native to InduSoft on this SMA client. This way you can view and interact with remote devices, phones, tablets, iPads, Android, desktops, anything that supports a current HTML5 browser. And again, I'm focusing on some of the features that we're releasing or have released specifically for that thin client. We haven't abandoned the other ones. This is just kind of a forward-going focus for us. Licensing, many of you know that we've got run times that start at 150 tags and go up to 10 million tags. The reason I'm showing this slide is as of version 8.1, we've simplified the licensing not only for the thin clients, but it used to be on this slide on the right-hand column here, we would, in addition to the tag count, we would also show the driver count. Well, we've made that unlimited for all versions. It's really limited only by the hardware that you're going to supply, so you're not license limited based on the number of drivers for a license anymore, so we've simplified that. And with that, let's see here, I'm going to get into version 8.1 Service Pack 1. Version 8.1 Service Pack 1 went up on the website Monday, and so it's available now. And for anybody who has version 8.1 with no service pack or no patch, you don't need an additional license. So Service Pack 1 will install and run if you already have 8.1. Again, it's just a service pack for 8.1. There's only one download. So if you are new to InduSoft and you haven't installed anything yet, this is the version that you want. That'll do a full install for you. If you already have 8.1, the exact same download will do an incremental update to it and put the Service Pack 1 on that. Some things that we're going to cover today: a new alarm feature specifically for mobile access, the custom widget library. I'm going to spend a lot of time today talking about the new custom widgets. These are essentially new features in the product, new objects, if you will. And IoT View, direct connection to Wonderware Online Insight. I'll show you that, and driver updates and some additional updates that might be of value to you depending on how you use the product. So let's go ahead and get started. If we look at the alarms and events improvements, this is specifically for mobile access. What I'm talking about right now, again, specifically for mobile access. As we've been working towards a goal of having 100% functionality on the SMA client or mobile access with all of the features. As of version 8.1, we now have 100% of the objects are now supported in the mobile access client. Sorry, my mouse is doing that. The idea is that all of the features, if you develop a project natively in InduSoft, are going to be available on the mobile access client. And as of version 8.1, we got to 100% of the objects, but not quite the 100% of the features of each one of those objects are supported. So now we're working towards that goal. So in 8.1 Service Pack 1, you can see here we've added support for the proprietary and binary alarm history formats. And what does that mean? If I go flip over to the development environment here, bring that into view here. If you had a project and you had set this up, let me maximize this, and you had set this up so that you were using proprietary or the binary format. Now, those are stored locally on the runtime in a file. You didn't used to be able to see those on the alarm or event object on a mobile access client. You used to have to use a SQL database of some sort to be able to view the data on the mobile access. So in Service Pack 1, what we've added is the proprietary and the binary formats to be able to see those on the mobile access client. In addition to that, there's some things to do with the custom fields as well. So that's here, the custom fields. So what do I mean by that? You have the ability to add up to 10 custom fields in here. So let's say I add 2 of those. Now when you, and this has been around for a while, but now these features are now supported on the mobile access client. You get these additional fields as you add more and more of those. And basically you can put text in here whatever you want to do and then use that text really in any way that you want to. So I built an application some time ago that when you had an alarm, if you clicked on it, this tag would go into, or this value would go into a tag, and then I would use that to open up another screen and position a red circle, let's say, on the machine where the alarm is actually located. So some really higher end functionality just by taking advantage of those up to 10 fields. And so again, those are now supported on the mobile access version of this object. Also, foreground and background colors configured in alarm worksheets are now supported. So also in that same area here in this alarm worksheet, these colors for your foreground and background, whether or not the alarm is active, acknowledged, or normalized, those color combinations are available now here. What you have to understand is that the alarm object, the grid object, and the trend object were something that we had to kind of recreate, and we're working towards that. The alarm object was one of the last ones to come because first we had to create the grid object, and then the alarm object is kind of built on the same technology as the grid object. So now we're adding features to kind of catch up and make it fully functional in there. The neat thing is you don't have to recreate your screens. We're doing this so that it makes it easy for you, so that you create your screens in our native development environment, and then that's all you have to do really is click publish, set up your web server, and then here under graphics, go under your thin clients and set up your mobile access. And often that's just opening that and saving that and really no configuration there. So the benefits are really support for the proprietary database format. You don't need an external SQL database when saving alarm history and displaying it on mobile access. Again, that file for either the proprietary or the binary will be saved on the runtime server, but you'll be able to now visualize the data on mobile access clients as well. Moving on, we have a new library of custom widgets. Let me talk briefly about custom widgets, and we'll get back into this slide in a minute. A few versions ago, we added the functionality of custom widgets. Let me go create a new project here, and you can see how this works. Now, custom widgets, as we started to deploy on non-Windows-based platforms, whether it's the IoT View runtime or whether it's the SMA client being on a browser on an Android device, an iPad, Macintosh, things of that nature. As we were developing this, we found the need, much like ActiveX and .NET, when you put an ActiveX or .NET control on the screen, you get three things associated with it. Basically, those are standardized interfaces. You get properties, methods, and events. And it's a standardized way to interact with those controls, either ActiveX or .NET controls. And so when we started deploying on non-Windows-based, because ActiveX and .NET are Windows-based technologies only, we were kind of left to like, okay, now what do we do? We found out that there are many, many, many hundreds, if not millions, of what's loosely called web widgets out on the internet. And these web widgets are built on JavaScript, HTML, CSS, varying technologies, and they really have no standardized interface to them, no way to get at the data, send or receive data to or from them. And so what we did is we built this custom widget interface. Now, if you put a custom widget on the screen, let's say that I create a new one here, and I call this chart. By doing this, I can add an interface here, let's say value 1. And by doing this, I'm now creating hooks into JavaScript that are inside of my project, my widgets folder inside of this project. And I can also add events into here. Now, in doing so, you have to know a little bit of JavaScript. And if you want to know a little bit more about doing this, I have a video that I did a while back. If you go to the InduSoft website and you go into support, video library, webinars, this is where you're going to find at least over 150, probably 160 webinars now. And if we go back to, when did I do this? I think I did this in December, tips and tricks webinar. About 3/4 of the way through this or so, you can scroll around in there. I did a custom widget from scratch. I grabbed one off the internet, I put it in my project, I changed the JavaScript and show you how you can do that. So that's a good place where you can pick that up if you haven't seen that. That's if you want to create your own custom widget. Well, today we're not going to do that. We're actually going to show you that there are 5 custom widgets in a library that we've created for you. And to get at those, you use this import tool. So let me go back to the PowerPoint and make sure I cover this. These are distributed as what's called a CWP, a custom widget package. The extension is, again, CWP. First, you're going to place a custom widget on the screen and then import the CWP. So I placed that custom widget on the screen just by going like this, and then we're going to do import, and then here's the 5 custom widgets that you have. Now, I like to think of these as just new objects, but this is how you put them into your project. So there's web browser, calendar, image list, pie chart, and tree view. Now, the neat thing is you don't have to know Java to be able to use these. We can just, let's say, for example, if I grab the calendar object here, when I say OK, it imports that into my project. I can then click on OK, and now that calendar object is inside of my project, and then that leaves me with all of the tags. All the JavaScript behind the scenes is already done. To be able to use this, you just have to get at the documentation. So let's see how we get at the documentation. Once it's imported, the documentation will be in the web widget folder as help.pdf. So let's go take a look at that here. Let me open up my projects here. I put that, created a new project called project. And in my web widgets folder, if you remember, I imported that calendar object. So in here is help.pdf. And each one of these custom widgets, the help is going to be named help.pdf. I just want to point out that the help is not part of the main technical reference. It's not part of the drivers. It's its own separate help. So if I launch this, this came up off screen here. You can see there's all of the documentation for that particular custom widget. In this case, it lets us either use a CSV format or a JSON format. We can go down and see all of the different examples here. So here's an example of a text CSV file delimited, and the data, and I'm going to point this out in a few minutes. Just take a look here. This is the event label. Then you have the start date and time, the end date and time, the data, and then the color. So again, pay attention to that because I'm going to call that up here in a few minutes. But I wanted to point out that the documentation for this is not part of the standard help. It's not part of the technical reference. It's not part of the drivers. It's a PDF in its own. That way we can separately update these if we need to and not have to redo the entire product. All right, so let's go back here. And so in general, these libraries now enhance the flexibility of the obviously, very feature-rich custom widget, but instead of having to program it, now we have a library of those already created, and we're planning on doing some more. So let's get into each one of these. First, the tree view. The tree view is a way to build and manipulate different nodes in a hierarchical graphical interface. So I'm going to take what's built into the tree view documentation. In fact, let's see. I have a project that I already created, and let's open that up here. So while I was doing this, I don't want to save that, sorry. Let's close this. No, don't save that. Let's open up my test project here. And that's all the way up here. And while this is opening up, what I'm going to do is go back into my project folder. So this is a little bit different project here. This one's called my custom widget test. And in the tree view, the documentation here, and this is probably coming up offline. It is over on my other screen, I should say. And what I wanted to point out is in this maybe I already had the tree view, or which one did I open up the calendar before? So here's the tree view. And what I wanted to point out is you can pass this a CSV syntax. And here's the formatting, and you'll see what this becomes. So I'm going to pick world, and then I'm going to have world Europe, world Europe Germany, world Europe France, world North America, then the US and Canada. Associated with that is also some data. So this item here is a piece of data. I can put anything that I want to in there, any text, that I want to, and then an icon. So here we're going to have a German flag, a French flag, a US flag, and a Canadian flag. And so you can see also, let me get this out of the way, here in my configuration file, which I'll open up in a second, I'm going to point to these different Canadian flag, French flag, German flag, US flag. And if I open up this configuration, I edit this with Notepad++, this is that same format. I basically recreated that, but I got a little bit different data in here, but it's those PNGs for those different flags. So let's see how this works. And again, I'm going to clean this up and post this application along with the video. So let's open up that screen with this tree view. And again, this file that I had is tree configuration file, CSV. And so in order to load that, I just have to change that file name to get it to reload. So first I load in a blank, and then I load that actual name. And here's the configuration of it. And basically I'm telling it what that tag name is for that, to go find that file name. And then I can get selected data and the selected node out of that with these two tags. So very simply configured. And now when I run this, I'll load that file in, and you can see here world, and then I'll expand that. I get Europe and North America, and there's my icons on my Germany node, my France node, and then US and Canada. And if I pick one of these, let's say I pick USA, now the data that I had in there was for the different screens that I have in this project. but then you can also see the entire node kind of tree in there as well. Now, the reason I did this is I wanted to test this for a customer that was asking, what if we wanted to navigate by using this? Well, there's a couple different ways I could do this. I could pick the node that I wanted to go to. Maybe this had my screen structure in here. Instead of countries in the world, I would have my screen structure, and then I could open that selected one, and it would go to my pie chart screen. Unfortunately, I don't have any navigation in this one, so I'll have to go back manually here. Another way that this could be done would be to build right in the event of the object when you change the selected item, then put a script in here and use the open command. And then that way you wouldn't have to use that second step, that second button. When you selected a node, it would jump right to that screen. So that was something that we did kind of proof of concept, and that worked. So hopefully you can understand how that works and where to find the documentation for that as well. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. Whoops, went back to the wrong thing. The PowerPoint. And now let's get into the calendar object. So the calendar widget, custom widget, allows the user to build and manipulate events on a calendar. Sorry, my mouse has been acting funny all day. Let's go back here. So you get to build and manipulate events on a calendar with the precision of minutes. So it's not limited to hours or every 15 minute or half hours. You can go down to the minute mark, which I'm going to show you here in just a second. But the calendar object, notice here you get the month, the week, the day, and the list view, and then you get some navigation. And this allows you to see different events that you have configured. Now, you're going to need a user interface to be able to send information to this and change things. And so that's what I've kind of started working on here and got a general idea. Got quite a ways into this, but I wanted to remind you again, I'm going to be putting this or some type similar of this application up on the website so that you can take advantage of these features. So here's the calendar object. And in the calendar object, I really just configured a few tags. The file name that's going to configure the events on here, and I'll show you that in a moment. The current events, when I get an event that is currently started but not yet finished, it'll go over here into this current events. When I have finished events that have finished, they'll go into this finished events down here in the bottom. And then started events, when they start, they'll show up here in this started events. And I think there's one more, which is the view. Oh, I'm passing it the month, the week, or the day, or the list view. That's really all I have configured in there. The critical one is the file name. And so when I do all this stuff over here and I build the label, the start time, the end time, the data, the color, it builds a CSV file out of my hard drive. And let me go ahead and open that up and show you. Let's see here. And we'll bring this in. So that is actually in my calendar folder in my project. And that configuration file, what that looks like is this. It looks like the event name, separate. This again is a CSV file. So then I have the date and time for the start, the date and time for the end, my data payload, and this is a string. And so this is between commas. This happens to be my fourth thing in. So the event, the start, the end, the data, and then the color. But notice that this data is just a string. And in this case here, what I did is I configured two pieces of data in between commas, but they're separated by the pipe character or the vertical little line that's on your keyboard. You can separate that by a semicolon, whatever the case. I'm going to show you how I then use a built-in scripting function with InduSoft to then parse those two pieces of data out of that single kind of payload in there. But before we get started here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete this file because we're going to create a brand new one and start over here. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to run this calendar object here. And it's going to start off blank. Now, everything over here on this calendar object is part of the calendar with the exception of the clock up here. That's one of our built-in standard symbols. Over here on the right, this is kind of the user interface that I've put together to put stuff on this calendar. So if I start with my date and time here, I've got a nice little interface here that I can pick today, and I'm going to apply that, so that picks today's date. I'm in the Eastern time zone of the U.S., so what I'm going to do is click on now, and it's 4:31 here. And I'm not sure if I'm going to give myself enough time, so I'm going to skip ahead another minute here, and I'm going to go to 4:33 as the start time for an event. And then I also have a nice little way to copy these things down. I just click on that, and I've copied those down. And my ending event is going to happen 1 minute, oops, my fault here, 1 minute after that. Also, these are such that you can click on them and pull up a pop-up keypad. So I have a 1 minute event happening here. I'm going to make this event 1. And again, this is kind of a very manual operation, but you could create your own user interface. I'm going to pick blue as a color here. I've got a nice little slider set up here where I can pick different colors. When I do this, this is going to, when I click on Write to File, it's going to build that CSV string out of the event, the start time, the stop time, the data, the color, put that into a string, and then write it to that configuration file. So if I go ahead and do that, what that's done is it's put that event on there, and it's actually written that to that file that unfortunately I closed. Hopefully I'll have enough time here. Come in here, Web, Widgets, Calendar, and it's made that one-line entry that I just configured there. That's in that file now. So what we should see when this thing gets to 4:33, we're going to see this exact string come out in the started event and the current event. And I'm going to take my hands off the mouse here while I count down. So again, I'm not touching anything. I'm not clicking on anything. And there we go. We got the event in. Again, it's a duplicate of that string. This is now started, and it's current, means it has started and not yet finished. But then I was able to parse out this data, and I'll show you how I did that in a minute, or probably another 45 seconds or so. Wait for this to get to the finished, and then it'll dump in here. While I'm waiting, I can actually click on this, and when I do, you get this selected event. You get that exact same string back into the selected events tag. So let's see here. We got another 30 seconds or so. Let me take a quick drink of water here. Apologize. And give me a second. Okay, I'm back. So we got about another 10 seconds or so. And again, I'm going to leave the mouse alone and count down to 1, go. And now we get the current event goes away. The finished event is what happened. And by the way, the started event does not clear. That's just something to note. I can look at this in different views. The week view, now I scroll down here, because that's just 1 minute long, it appears it's just kind of a very thin strip there. The day and the list view, okay? And since it's currently selected here, it's black, but it was originally blue there. So now let's go add more events in a slightly different way. Let me go back to the week view here. And let me add an event that spans multiple days, starting at Monday through Friday. Maybe you've got a lighting setup, or who knows how you're going to use this calendar. We've made it very flexible. So let me start an event starting on Monday from 8 to noon, let's say, and have that repeat every day. So again, this interface is fairly flexible. So I'm going to create event 2, and I'm going to make this start on the day. What day was that? 4/2. So we'll pick 4/2. We'll apply that. We'll copy that down. We'll have this start at 8 a.m. and then we'll have this thing go to 5 p.m., let's say, or maybe, what did I say? I think I said noon earlier. So we'll do, maybe we'll just go to 11 so I don't get confused with noon versus midnight here. And we'll say 00. Okay. Apply. So this is going to start on Monday the 2nd, go from 8 to 11, and maybe I have data in here that is different type of data. Let's do 4, 5, 6, and we'll pick a different color. Let me use my little color sliders here. I'll pick some different colors, mix and match some red, some green, some blue. Get a little bit darker color in here. We go. And then I will add that in here. Notice that there's different formats this will take. So it took a named color or it took an RGB notation. Once I add that, I could simply write this and that would go on the Monday only. The way that I have this interface set up is I could have multiple days and I could have this span a certain number of days. And what it's going to do is add to the date the number that you have here. So I've started this with this event 2, 4, 5, 6 data. Here's purple from 8 to 11, 5 days spanning. And when I write that, here's how it goes into that calendar. So this shows up again, depending on the view, this shows up a little bit differently depending on how you have that set up. So here's a list view in chronological order. Now, I wanted to also point out one more thing. Let me go back to the this view here. The data, we can put multiple pieces of data in there. As I mentioned before, how is that parsing that out of that string? Well, this is the 4th piece of data over. And so I'm looking at the started events tag, and I've actually got a background script running here. And I use the built-in InduSoft scripting command called string get element, and it looks at that started events tag for the comma delimiter and then the 4th item over, and that's what it puts into this start field here, right here. And that's how I parse that data. Now, another way to do this is we could put multiple things in that piece of data, like a payload, if you will, and then have that parse apart as well. So let me do this here for 430. I guess I'll have to do it for 439. So again, we'll go back to today. We'll apply that. We'll set that up for, let's see, 430 is 16, 39. Hopefully I can get this in time. 39, apply, copy that down. We'll add 1 more minute to that, so it'll go off after that. We'll hit apply. Now this will be event 3, and here's the point that I wanted to make. Lights, and I'm going to separate this by a pipe character. You can separate this by anything and parse it however you wanted to. And maybe I had data in here of 4, 5, 6. Let's make this just a simple color. Again, maybe make this blue. And when I do that, I'll write that to that file. And let's see, does that show up on there? Yep. So 439, that event 3 is going to happen. And what's going to happen is it's going to parse that data. And you can see here, this is the full set of data, but then I just wanted to parse out that second piece in there, and it was able to parse that apart. So you could put just about any amount of data that you wanted in here, as long as the string doesn't get longer than 1024 characters. So you can see how I can parse that apart. So very, very flexible in the feature sets. You can see here I've got also a way that I can feed in the different views in there. And there's different ways to remove items. But again, this is happening really just to that CSV file out on the hard drive. But there's ways to do this instead of a file to handle this all tag-based as well. So what this has been doing the whole time is building up this text file out there on the hard drive. So hopefully that gives you some idea how that object can be used. And now let's see, what are we going to show here? Can you save the events on a SQL database? Question came in, for the calendar events, can you save the events on a SQL database? Absolutely. The object actually supports whether or not you're coming into a tag or a file. So in this case, I'm doing everything, let's see, that's the tree view. I'm doing everything in a file that's CSV, but you can also support whether or not it's coming into a tag. So this is either the file or the tag. So you can pull those values out of a database just as a CSV piece of text or assemble those however you wanted to. So yes, absolutely, you can do that as a SQL database. I just don't happen to have that interface created for you today. Web browser. The web browser is a very simple object. Basically, you get to configure only two potential properties on it, the URL, and once it's loaded, and I wasn't even touching my mouse that time, I apologize. The property is the URL, and when the page is loaded, you get an event back so you can write a script on that. So it's really just a simple custom widget that allows you to host external content, and this could be web pages, PDF files, videos, or really any content supported by web browsers. One idea that I have not tried is whether or not this web browser will support IP cameras. Can I point it to an IP camera and then see the video inside of that? I'm not sure if that will work yet, but I've got a really good example in this project. So let's close this down, open up the browser object. And I had some trouble with this morning, and hopefully this one will work, where I had some internal proxy configuration problems, and I couldn't get to web pages here. So let's see if this works. There we go. That works. So you can just type in. Now, this is a text box, so I can type in anything in here and get to that page. This will, as I mentioned earlier, this will support PDFs if you've got the PDFs extensions built in. And then we actually have a bottling video built into the PC demo. So I just pointed to that on my hard drive, and you can see that I'm playing a video in here. Why can we do all this, or why are we doing all this? To support web pages, PDFs, videos, to make your operations staff, to make your maintenance staff more efficient, to be able to have training videos, help videos. When this problem happens, what do they do next? Just make it visual. And again, these will work not only on the local viewer, but on SMA clients as well. So let's see. You're welcome. I think I answered your question okay there for the calendar object. Appreciate the question. So that's the web browser object. Keep that very simple. And you know what? Let me show you one more thing inside of that. So not only is there really just one tag, the URL tag that I was setting with each one of these buttons. Let me show you how I was doing that. I was just coming in here and setting the URL tag to the URL or the PDF that I wanted to go to, et cetera. But there's also one event, which is on load, meaning what do I do when the thing loads? If I want to detect when it's finished loading, I can run a script here and do that whenever that web page, file, whatever happens to load. Okay. So moving on to the next one here is the pie chart. What I couldn't believe for many, many years is that we didn't have a pie chart object and got very, very few questions about it. But more recently, as we're doing more and more dashboard type applications, people are looking for that type of object. So we built a custom widget for that. And if we go in here and go into the pie chart, basically what I've done is I've set a button here that I've built the string. Now this is in JSON format, and this is a little bit different. This happens to have a square bracket, a curly bracket, and then all of the data for one slice of the pie is inside of curly brackets. Now this is not an InduSoft format. This is a standard called JSON, J-S-O-N. And in this case, I've now separated out, in this particular case, three things: the label, the variable, and the color. And I'm passing it JavaScript, a tag that I have on the slider, and then a color. And then for all the remaining pie slices, I've just hard-coded those in here so we can see how this works. So what I'm going to do is slide the slider. That'll adjust my JavaScript value, meaning the slice of the pie labeled as JavaScript. And then I'll change that a couple of times. So let's see how this works here. Oops, I want to do that. I want to do this. So let me adjust this kind of 50% up here and load that. And you're going to see JavaScript is kind of, well, it says it's 23%. All the rest of these are going to remain constant because I don't have a way to change those. But if I change this to make this a little bit larger slice of the pie, now we're going to see JavaScript take over that. If I make this a smaller piece, do this and make that a smaller piece. So for these that are showing up, I'm not sure why those are not showing up. Let's reload that here. There we go. So you can configure this as different donuts, different radiuses, inside, outside, diameter, labels can be, you can change the fonts, what you want to show up on each one of these. So it's, again, a very configurable thing. So you can see how we've changed percentages, font sizes, how you want these little labels, these flyouts, titles, things of that nature. So very customizable new feature there, new custom widget, I should say. And if we go back to the PowerPoint, next page, image list. Now the image list is going to display images from different formats, including animated GIFs, PNGs, SVG, JPEG, bitmaps, etc. And they don't have to be animated. This is just one thing that we can do. But we can supply it a list. I apologize. My mouse has been doing this all day, and I've even seen it do it without me touching the mouse. This allows you to set a list of images in a CSV file and then control the frequency used to switch through them. So kind of like an old cartoon that you might have written on the pages of a book and then flipped through the pages. You get to say, I want image 1, image 2, image 3, whatever the file name is. And they don't have to be the same file name. They can be all over the map, just file names separated by commas. And then you can give it a frequency to go through those. And then you can also apply color masks. Here you can see we've applied a green color mask to this thing so that you can highlight, show statuses, those types of things. And there's ways to apply color masks just to certain colors within the object, and there's tolerance levels and things of that nature. I'm not going to be demonstrating that today because we have this nice little graphic here, but I'm going to go through some of the file animations here and how we did that. So if I open up my file list here, which I think is on this page, and if I go back to my file browser here and show you in this image list, I've got these 10 or 11 images for a damper for a HVAC application, and I've got the images are 00 through 100. Now, they don't have to be the same name. What you're going to see when I run this is I'm loading this into just a tag that holds a CSV format. Apologize, let me go back. When I run this, I'm going to load in those image names, and they're just separated by commas. So it's all, I think it's 11 of those. Now we've got two choices here. We can we can transition through them, and this is a number of milliseconds. So this is a little over a half a second between each of those images, and hopefully you can see this damper opening and then starting back over. I can make it go faster or slower. I don't know how much this will show up on the WebEx. And I can make it go really slow at once per second. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, also I can set that transition period back to 0, and I can change the index of which one of these files I'm pointing to manually. So very flexible there. Now, in addition to having a list of files, this will also work with animated GIF files. So in this case, I didn't make a button. I'm just going to copy this file name here, hit Control-C on my keyboard, hit Control-V on my keyboard, and now when I load that, apologize, let's try that again. And now when I set a transition period, actually I don't even need to do that. I just need to force it to reload, I guess. The layers and the timing are built into an animated GIF file type and an animated PNG file type. So you just need to supply it with that single file, and that's just sitting there running on its own. So that's another format that'll work. It'll also support SVG graphics types in there as well. So see if there's anything else that and all the different colors. So take a look at the documentation. Very, very feature-rich image list there. Let's see, any other questions? I don't see any new questions yet, so let's move along. All right, so did I cover all of those? I covered the calendar, the browser, the image list, the pie chart, and the tree view. So I guess that's all of those. So let's move on now to the Wonderware Online Insight direct interface from IoT View. So for those of you who don't remember, the IoT View license is running on Linux or VxWorks. In this case, I have it running on Linux on my Raspberry Pi that I have on my desk. I want to very strongly suggest this does not have to be a Raspberry Pi. We're not advertising Raspberry Pi. We're not saying Raspberry Pi is the only thing that this works with. It's kind of like I demonstrate my, InduSoft Web Studio using my HP laptop. I'm not promoting the HP laptop. I'm promoting the fact that we can run on a Windows environment. And the Raspberry Pi just happens to give me a very inexpensive, very small footprint on my desk Linux operating system. And my screen changed there. So what this is doing is from the trend task, it's going to allow me to log from the trend task directly to the cloud or Wonderware Online. If you're not familiar with Wonderware Online, let me pull in my browser here, and link for that is online.wonderware.com. And if you don't have an account, you can get a free trial version, last 45 days. You can sign up for that. That's all I'm using here. This is a separate purchase, not part of the InduSoft Web Studio connection to this. But let me log into this. You know what? I'm going to do this off screen so I don't accidentally show everybody my password here. So sorry, got a long, apparently I've got a long email address here. And for some reason it didn't take everything there. Let me try this again here. All right. All right, so I'm in the middle of logging on here. And again, I've got my browser off screen, so bear with me just a second. All right, so I'm logged in. This is what it looks like when you log in. Let me go full screen here. And what I've done is, in fact, I can just start over and delete what I have in here. So I'm going to log into the administration part of this, which again was just up here. And I'm going to go into data sources. And the data source that I used in the morning webinar was right here. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to trash that, remove that. And I'm going to create a new data source. So this wants me to type in the name of my data source so I can make sure that I want to remove it. It's just kind of a protection mechanism. So that will get deleted there. And I'm going to go ahead and create another one. Oops, I don't need to do that there. I need to do it here. So I'm going to create a new data source as a CSV or JSON format. And it's going to ask me what do I want to call that. I'll call that IoT View Demo 2 and say OK. And this makes it really, really easy. Watch this. So when this configures, that's all I have to do is copy this token. And then I copy this clipboard and say allow access to my clipboard, and I just make sure that that's done that. So now that's copied in my clipboard. Now I'm going to go back to InduSoft Web Studio. I'm going to go into a project that I created this morning here, which is my Wonderware Online test. And that's all I have is I have, get over to this project here. It's really just a single screen with a single tag for temperature. So this is sliding the value up and down that slider for temperature. And then here in the trend task, what I've done is change this from proprietary, not database, but I'm using Wonderware Historian. And then in here, when I originally came in here, this was, let me get rid of this now, this gigantic long string here. All right, and then I'm going to paste in my new string that I copied or that I just created from that new source and say okay. So now this is going to, here's what's going to happen. This save on trigger is saving once per second. It's going to save my data once per second into a CSV file. And then based on this configuration, it's going to move or forward that CSV file every 15 seconds to the Wonderware Online account. Or based on a max file size. So whenever you get up to a certain limit, it will then push that as well. So this is a push. It's not a push-pull. So this is going to be sending data to the Wonderware Online account only. So when I save this, and now the thing that I messed up when I was testing earlier is that this feature is only supported on IoT view. So in this case, since I made some changes to this screen, I'm going to publish my screen here. And I have to load this now into my Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to connect up to my Raspberry Pi. And that should be the IP address of my Raspberry Pi. I'm connected there. I'm going to go to my project. I'm going to make sure the current project that was in there is stopped. I'm going to download this project that I just changed the data source connection, and I removed one of the two sliders that I had on the screen. So while this is downloading, I'm going to take a quick drink of water. Bear with me a second here. Okay, I'm back. So now that's down there, I'm going to run my project in my Raspberry Pi. And now I'm going to remotely view that. So if I bring my browser back online here, I'll close this. Let's open up another browser window here, and I'm going to go remotely view with my SMA client my, oh, that's not the right address. It's 192.168. There we go. I'm going to remotely view my mobile access screen on my Raspberry Pi. And so this is actually on my Raspberry Pi here. So I'm going to slide the slider up. I'll set that at 48. I'll let that go for a couple of seconds. And again, this is going to log every second, but then every 15 seconds is when it pushes that data to the Wonderware Online account. So if I go back to my Wonderware Online account, go back to my main view here, I should probably have some data in there by now. It's probably been 15 seconds or so since I've been talking. I can then just very easily come up here to this search bar. It doesn't look like I have any data in there yet. It may take a second or two to publish. Let's go back to my mobile access. Let me change this slider a couple of times just to get some more values in there. Come back in here. Do we have data in there yet? Nope, no data. I hope I didn't screw anything up. Change this one more time. Apologize, there's no data in there yet. There's a chance that I grabbed my data source wrong. Let's see, or it's just taking a little while longer. I'll come back to that. Let me move that off screen here. But that's as easy as that is here in the trend object, the historian configuration. You change that to the CSV, paste in that authentication token, and that should be it. So let's, you know what? There's a chance since I had that open, I didn't save that yet. Let me make sure that this is in fact the right project. So let me stop that. I wasn't sure if I had that trend worksheet open. So let me stop my project again, download it again. And there we go. Let me go back to my PowerPoint here. So the neat thing is there's no gateways needed. In the past, if you were logging from InduSoft, you needed the what we call Studio Database Gateway to then grab that data and then push it to Wonderware Online. So now this is in a CSV format or JSON format, and it's going directly to the cloud. No need for that middle piece of software. It goes directly from the device to the cloud. And so this should be done downloading now. Let's run that again. Go back to my browser window. And see if I have any data in there yet. There we go. And I could type in that tag if I knew it. But in this case, I can just navigate down to this, and there's my tag, IoT View Demo 2. And let me maximize this browser here. There's a few different icons and different formats that I can show that data in. In this case, I'm just going to show it in a line chart. And there's my data. It went from the value that I had down to 0. Let me change the scale on here, and then here's the different data that I was shoving in earlier. So I should be able to go back to my mobile access, reload this. And change the value of my tag here once again. And in 15 seconds or so, that will show up on here if I hit a refresh. And we've got some, there's my 0, and eventually it'll show that value that I just put in there. So you can see how quick and easy that is to get information in there with very, very little configuration. Literally copied and pasted that once I configured this in the Wonderware Online Insight page. So very, very quick to get that data to the cloud. All right. We've enhanced the tag integration for the Omron NJ and NX PLCs and the CJ2, although that's only available when purchased and licensed through Omron. So that doesn't affect most of you, but some of you on the call it may. But we also have updated the MQTT, the Code Assist, the SO Machine, the Siemens TIA driver, the TI-500, and the ABC IP driver, which is Ethernet IP, is now available on IoT View for Linux. So all of those drivers, if you didn't know this, the drivers are actually separate from the product in InduSoft. So let me go back to the InduSoft homepage here. If you didn't know this, you can use older drivers in newer versions and newer drivers in older versions. You can mix and match for whatever reason you might choose to do that. But if you ever want to make sure that you have the latest driver, you can go to right here on the website, Products and Downloads, Drivers. And here's a list of all the current drivers. So, for example, the MQTT driver is currently at version 1.6, so that's brand new, and that's what's in the Service Pack 1 that we have. So some real just, cleanups and advancements on those, but I think the real neat one is the Allen Bradley Ethernet driver is now available on IoT View. Some other things that have been added here, and we skip through a couple of these. We've improved the security system stability. We've resolved some small issues with the first version of the OPC UA server that we had. We missed a couple of the kind of necessary features, so we've added those in. We've added support for having a string tag on the node ID column in the OPC UA client. And in mobile access, this is probably one of the neater ones. When you have bad quality of data, let's say, for example, the PLC goes offline, many of you will know that you can get question marks on the screen. Now, that comes from here in the project viewer settings, show question marks when quality is not good. And that's worked for years and years on the local viewer and did not work on the SMA client. So now on the mobile access client, you can see those same question marks when quality is not good. We've also implemented the capability of using the find feature to find text and tags, even on a password-protected document. If you didn't know this, you can take each one of these documents, scripts, graphics, screens, and you can password protect it. So our find feature here wasn't finding text and tags inside of password protected documents, now it does that. So in addition to that, we've implemented 58 additional things among bug fixes, performance improvements, things of that nature. I'd also like to point out, make sure you take a look at the release notes. You can get at those in a couple of different ways. You can get at those here on the help. You can get at the release notes here under file. If you go to all programs, then navigate to the InduSoft folder, you can get at the release notes here. The way that I prefer to get at them is if I just navigate to where InduSoft is installed. So here under program files, x86, InduSoft Web Studio, right here you can get at those. And I prefer to open those up with a browser because then they're nicely formatted. So you can see here requested changes, bug fixes are usually listed as issues, and all the different things that we've done in the different versions, service packs and patches that have been released recently. So I'd like to encourage you to take a look at those to make sure we fix something that you're looking for in that particular version. So you can also find those up on the website. Again, Service Pack 1 is available up on the website now. You can go products and downloads, get to it that way. Also here under documentation, we try to post the release notes for the current version. This should be for Service Pack 1. That way you can take a look to see what has changed before you go through the trouble of downloading and installing. So always take a look at these release notes to determine whether or not you want to move forward with it. And we keep that, again, that forward compatibility as well. So if there are any questions, go ahead and throw those into the chat panel or the Q&A panel. Right now, there's no new questions that I haven't answered. I would like to thank everybody for joining today and really appreciate it. Hopefully you find some value in some of the new custom widgets, the new alarm features, the Wonderware online capability, always trying to improve the software. Really appreciate everybody joining today. We had a really good turnout for today. And with that, I don't see any questions coming in. I'll hang back for just a second, and I'll leave the contact information up here. So, all right. Well, with that, I don't see any questions. Maybe hopefully I did a good job and showed you everything. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thanks, everybody. Fill out the survey. Let us know how we did. Let us know how we're doing in general, and we'll send you a free T-shirt. Thanks for joining us, and everybody have a great day.